live. Everyone can see us, hear us. Let us know in the chat though. How do we look? Are you loving my lip, Margo? What do you think? It's a fall y'all lip.
It's a fall, y'all. It looks like velvet.
Thank you. I made this lip down at a little place in DC, and it's called Thought Life. So if anybody is interested, just so you know.
Well, Tashira talked about having to turn over her thought
Mm-hmm.
leadership position and become an emeriti.
Yeah, I did. I talked. Stay tuned for the episode. It's coming up soon, and you all, it is time for me to pass the torch. And all the greats do it, Margo.
People are really sad about it, friend.
I know, but I don't want to be like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I don't.
No,
I
we're
don't want to.
retiring early. We're retiring early. Hi.
Hello, hello, hello.
We're retiring early. I mean, here's the thing. This podcast, like we don't need to retire from the podcast,
This is true.
right? Because it's just joyful. But I get it. Your leadership position in a big organization like Thoughtlandia
It's taken so much out of me. Do you know how hard it's been?
to leave them all on red, to get all that diversity.
Diversity? How much hoeing I've been doing? Shit. I need a
Oh my
break.
gosh, look what Josh just brought me.
Woo, come on, mocktail.
Hey.
Hey, Jesse. You all go grab your mocktails, or in my case, my spin drift. Pineapple is my favorite. As you all know, tonight we're going to be talking about the presidential debate. Let us know if you watched it. We did a poll over on IG, and we gave folks 3 options. Number 1, yes, I watched it. Number 2, nope, my anxiety was too high. And number 3, girl, I'm just ready for November 6th. Which category do you fall in, friend?
So I watched it
Okay.
slowly. So I started watching it in real time, but then couldn't handle it. So then watched it in chunks the next day.
Okay.
I have very high anxiety about the election, but we need more time before November 6th. That's how I feel. What about you?
Yes. So I was on the train coming back from New York, our trip to New York. So it was kind of coming in and out. So I heard probably about 60% of it in real time. And the rest, like you, I've been able to kind of capture through some news coverage, which has been nonstop. As well as we both listened to the daily episode. And I also listened for into the follow-up episode about where this racist conspiracy theory about Haitian immigrants eating dogs is coming from, which I think we also have to talk about as well. Auntie Cleo said they've had their wrap it up box in their hand for weeks. Kelly said number 200% anxiety was too high. All right. Natty says number 1, definitely watched it. Jesse J, watch my girl put a hurting on that fool. She mollywopped them. I'm gonna be honest. I just hands down, let's start there, y'all. Let's talk about just before we get to the substance of the conversation, which on Trump's side there was little. Margo, how did Kamala, what was your thought on her performance?
So initially, I did not think she answered the first question well.
No, she was nervous.
She was very nervous. She was non-responsive. It wasn't about her family being middle class. It was about her plans for the economy.
Yes.
So that made me very anxious. But then she got her footing and she did this thing that really gifted litigators can do, which is have us kind of following them in these directions of argument. And I obviously supported her before, but I was like, yeah, being pro-choice is the choice of family. Like, yeah, like she just like wove these narratives so beautifully about the power of connection, of joy, how she's the candidate of unity versus divisiveness. And her non engagement with his Well, let me just say her ability to hold back from immediately engaging with his nasty rhetoric, but being very clear about where she stood was talented. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, speaking of a gifted litigator too, I thought she did a very good job of being on the offense so that she wouldn't have to get cornered around those issues like immigration and the economy that honestly Democrats have been seen as being very weak on. And so those were the talking points that she also cleverly wove in those troll moments that she knew was going to get to him.
Yes, like about crowd size and about being handed $400 million on a silver platter. And he was like, I wish I was.
And that's my thing, Margo, right? When he had the opportunity, he just fumbled the bag because he's such a megalomaniac. He's so
He can't help
narcissistic.
himself.
He can't help himself. And I remember being on the train and thinking to myself, how, as a species, not even as American society, but as human beings, did we get to the point where someone like Kamala Harris is on a stage doing anything with Donald Trump? How is that possible?
I don't, well, I'm going to ask that to you as our resident historian and sociologist here.
Oh, thank you. That's a heavy crown to wear. Neither being true, but I am
I mean,
obviously.
it's true because it's so farce. It's like it's a farce. Is that the right way to put?
Oh yeah,
Is that the right
absolutely.
word? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at the chat, and Portia, we agree. She painted pictures and carried us through stories. And she also at times, so Margaret, you mentioned her being a litigator. She also at times spoke very plainly. So I thought on the reproductive justice point, I mean,
Mm.
she didn't give you a high academic analysis. She spoke to people's everyday experiences. Donald Trump does not need to be making decisions about what happens to your body, period. And I think that would resonate with a lot of people. But I mean, we already know what it is, right? The fact that we have to be twice as smart, work twice as hard, be twice as disciplined. Being a woman is something that already is going to be used against you. So I thought her going up to him and shaking his hand and saying her name and how to pronounce it.
That was so amazing. Also, that she walked right up to him and he so clearly didn't want her to be in his space.
Mm-mm. So she owned the room from the beginning, owned her power. And then when you add on top of that, her being a Black woman as well, I don't think there is really too many more examples visually of the way that racism and misogynoir works in this society that Donald Trump could even be considered a viable candidate. Like how are we here? It is the mediocrity of a white cis hetero man that is always going to reign supreme in some situations.
Also, he just when you say he flubbed the bag, there were opportunities. I mean, not that he asked me, but like there are really um like Kamala had some concerning parts of her flippy floppiness from when she ran in 2020 till now and of course like what has transpired over the Biden administration, I would argue, which has been successful in many ways, but people are concerned about immigration and the border. I mean, immigration and the economy. And so there were opportunities for him to substantively question her, and he just didn't do it.
He couldn't. He couldn't. So really, in a lot of ways, he beat himself. But let's talk about her a bit, and you kind of have done that because I do want to be fair. You know, as journalists, we have to be objective, friend.
Well, we also have to be realistic, right? Like she's our candidate, but she's not perfect.
She's not, and we've talked about that here on the podcast. So you already touched on the economy and how she completely just evaded that question because she wants to do the most she can to distance herself from Biden while also not throwing him under the bus. So
Right.
that's number one. I would have wanted her to speak a lot more with more specificity around the war in Gaza and how she actually is going to push for a ceasefire and what that looks like as far as a two-state solution is concerned. It was high level, like Netanyahu's not going to respond to you just telling him what to do. We know that at this point, right?
Can I speak to that?
Yeah.
Because there are single issue voters. And so him saying that if you elect her, Israel's not going to exist in 2 years is pandering to the single issue Jewish voters.
Can you say
Of
more
which,
about
well, I can say a little bit, of which there are some.
that? Okay.
Israel is a really important part of a lot of American Jews' identity and agenda. And Kamala will not destroy Israel. That is not on the table. She is for a two-state solution, which most people in the world are for, including most Israelis.
Yeah. I mean, I think at this point, that's actually very good to point out about the positions of Israelis, because I think
Most Israelis do not support Netanyahu.
again,
Netanyahu
very points to point out.
is the Trump to Israel. So imagine our let's not even try to imagine it, but it would be as if we went to war under a Trump presidency. And Trump was like, bomb them, kill them. That's Netanyahu.
So then the question is, how is she going to deal with that? Right?
Correct.
What is she going to do? And I think substantively, any leader has to answer that in the time that we're in right now. It is a humanitarian crisis. So I would like for her to be stronger on that. And Zarandrian said, it's hard. We were so preoccupied with being happy she was putting him in his place that collectively we have overlooked the key points she refuses to speak to. So again, we have to be fair. There are some things that she is not. So the economy, for me, war in Gaza. Other thing I think that she finally did speak on, but I wanted to hear more of her personal story, and I don't know that it played well here for her, is about the race thing. So before, right, when asked about it, I think in the CNN interview, she refused to answer. Next, same old playbook. But at the debate, she actually said he's done this before, the birther argument around Obama. She called out how he had the 4-page, I think, news ad about the Central Park.
About the Central Park 5 and killing them?
Well, yeah, like they should be executed. These were children.
Executed. Oh, right.
Yeah.
We can't forget to talk about the execution of babies too.
Girl. So these were children who were later found to be innocent after serving many years in prison. So that's another public example of his racism. And also the DOJ case that they were investigating, charges of racism and I guess refusal to allow Black folks to either rent properties from him, or I don't know if it was a commercial lease or individual lease, but housing discrimination essentially, right? And so that's great that she reminded people of that. But he's talking about you. He's talking about you. He's claiming that you switched races, or, this is a chance, I think, for her to actually tell us personal stories and how she owns who she is as a Black and South Asian woman. And maybe she thinks she doesn't have to because that community is going to vote for her anyway. But I would have felt more in sync with her if she would have had a moment of kind of openness about who she is.
So I agree. I want to hear more about her but I think she's really trying to make herself more desirable to middle tier voters who don't want to talk about race in general. So
Absolutely.
like they think that his comments were stupid, and I think her not engaging with them in this very public way is pandering to that voting block, not to us, because we're going to vote for her.
Which is why
we're going to vote. Right. So exactly. Like, we can be disappointed. We want her to talk more about Gaza. We want her to talk more about identity. We want her to talk more about the economy, but whatever. There's no question. She's obviously the strongest candidate. But there is this section of the population that is undecided.
That's true. So there were times that she spoke directly to that population. And TA says, I don't think she wants to address it and make it a focus of the race. So yeah, so it is very strategic. I definitely understand that. But what it reminds me of, Margo, are the many times that we have to capitulate to the system and we have
Hmm.
to anesthetize parts of who we are in order to pander to the greater good. And I just feel like that is a situation that folks who are at the margins, a position that we oftentimes have to take. That's all.
I
So just
al-
point that
yeah,
out.
I agree with that. And I also feel like he gets away with stuff because he's a white dude that no one else would get away with. In terms of how he speaks about other people, how he questions people's identity, how he's so nasty about people, particularly women and people of color.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I mean,
that would never be permissible if it were anyone of a different gender or identity.
amen. Amen. Yeah. I mean, just, and I'm happy that the moderator asked him that question outright because, Margo, as you said, it's so egregious. Someone says openly she wasn't black, now she black. I don't know, she's black. Like, why do you think is to talk about somebody's race in that way?
And then
So,
being like, I don't care what she is. She can be whoever she wants. Dude, stop speaking.
and then I read it somewhere she was black. Then I read somewhere she wasn't. She's black. Like the fact that I can only imagine how his team was in the back, like biting their nails and pissing themselves.
Like, don't say black. Don't say anything. Apologize.
We gave you one job and you just have fallen apart. So, fallen apart. All right.
Okay.
So,
Can we talk
let's
about
keep
something
going.
else?
let's let's keep going. So you brought up the abortion at 9 months. In fact, you said abortion after the babies were born. Can you please address that, Margo?
And then the moderator was like, without even missing a beat, was like, executing babies is not allowed in any state.
Also, it's not abortion, nigga. It's a murder. Like, what are you talking about?
And you know what? This is the thing. I was talking to my mother in law about this today because she just is so apoplectic. She's
Wait, hold up. What does that mean?
she's so nervous about the election,
Okay.
particularly as it relates to reproductive justice. She's a reproductive justice voter, okay?
Okay.
Um, and I mean, among other things, but that's a very high priority, as it is for me. And this idea that anyone would want to terminate a pregnancy at 9 months just because it's like fun, you want to carry a fetus for 9 months?
Whole months.
No, something is seriously wrong, right? Either with the viability of that baby,
Mhm.
or if having that baby is going to kill the
Yeah.
host, meaning the mother.
Yep.
That is not something that anyone would ever want to do.
Yep.
So the idea that we are making decisions about other people's bodies and assuming that they're just like, you know what, I thought I wanted to be pregnant, but you know what, I actually don't want to be pregnant. You're not. That's not a thing.
You would not get to that point in your pregnancy. And so, and also, I mean, I'm not saying that there are MAGA Republicans like Marjorie Taylor, what's her name? Was MTG
Green.
Green, who wouldn't make similar arguments, but it's not lost on me that these are a lot of cishet men who are saying these ridiculous things, right? Because they've never had the experience. And so it's easy for them to just make up all of these misogynistic lies without even thinking about what they are saying because they hate women, number one. But number two, they never had the experience of being pregnant, of course.
But what I just and I'm seeing Anisha's comment in the chat. I just wish there had been a way for the moderators to like put like the like
Yeah.
when something was just factually incorrect. I know they were trying to not seem biased, which I appreciate as journalists ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it just felt like he was able to say all this crazy stuff and people believe him.
And that's what's really scary because we are in the era of misinformation. So let's talk about the eating of the pets, Margo.
So can I just Okay, so I'll give a little background, then I just want to share something that I
Okay.
saw today that is going to make everyone chuckle a little bit. So, Springfield, Ohio,
Yes.
a community that has received a lot of a big influx of immigrants over the last few years, particularly Haitian immigrants
Yes.
who are fleeing both natural and political disaster in their home country. Because we know that people don't leave their home unless they have to. Like you don't terminate a pregnancy in the 9 month because you just like, you know what, I want to go on vacation.
Woo-de-woo.
Um, and there's been tension in the community. I think it's a very purple part of the country. So, um, and there was an allegation that someone killed a pet. That's all I know.
Girl, so we are going to make sure that when this episode is posted, we drop the daily episode in the notes because I found it to be so interesting. And I'm sure you could take that situation and place it on top of many situations throughout history. The ways in which marginalized populations or Black populations, immigrants are being scapegoated as far as economic issues are concerned. So Springfield was a city that was in complete decline. Like nobody cared about it, nobody was going there. It had a horrible economy, and they were doing a lot of work to basically like rebuild and to rebrand themselves. And what happened is once the immigrants started to come, the economy shot up and things were actually getting much better. Well, unfortunately, when more Black people are in an area, obviously a lot of the racist vitriol is going to get started. And it reached a fever pitch when a little boy, this is so sad, a school bus,
Oh, yes,
actually,
a school
remember?
bus. Yes.
The bus was hit, and the person who
I
was
happened to
driving it
be
was a Haitian immigrant, by the way, who was not drunk, who was not under the influence of drugs nor alcohol, right? It was a horrific accident. It was an accident. A bunch of the kids got hurt. One little boy named Aiden actually died. After that is when someone actually wrote JD Vance about the entire situation and claimed that they were eating, I think, pets. I don't think they said cats, dogs, whatever. Fast forward, a Facebook post gets made. And after that, I mean, that's all it takes. The situation just completely devolves. And now we are into the ping pong
so do you
pizza
know what
game
else?
part
Thank you.
of the
Thank you for
QAnon.
thank you for the background. I also heard a daily where the dad, Aiden's dad, was like, they cannot use my son's name.
Yep.
There
Yep.
is nothing about what they stand for that we support, nor would my son.
And that's
Apparently,
what,
this little boy was really sweet and loving and very welcoming, and that this was a terrible accident, as accidents happen.
and so what the dad said in the press conference was, I wish that a 60-year-old white man would have hit and killed my son. He said my son was not murdered. My son was killed. He died in an accident. And this
And CD says the person who hit the little boy was a U.S. citizen. I did
on
not know
top of
that.
that, so he was an immigrant who was a U.S. citizen. It sounds like you're saying. So the Haitian
That
immigrants.
is not. That's not what I heard. So that's interesting.
Okay.
Um, that's a piece of information I believe them. But we should clarify in the notes.
Okay.
Um,
About where it came from. CD, so the same person also says that the Haitian immigrants were invited by the Springfield community to work there in the manufacturing industry. They needed workers. They are there on work visas. And so, once again, hey, Bernice, what has happened is this community is being used as a scapegoat. That is why Reconstruction failed in this country, right? This is why, from the beginning, poor white people and formerly enslaved Black people were never able to form a coalition. It is the same playbook, people. It is the same stereotypes that are being used over and over again. The problem is not capitalism. The problem is not systemic oppression. The problem is not poor policies, a lack of housing, a lack of healthcare. Oh, the problem is the Haitian immigrants. They're the reason why your rent is high. And by the way, JD Vance also said on Twitter, who cares if they're not actually eating pets? Let's just keep the moment going. Just open racism, as TA said. Open racism.
And benefiting from a narrative that is just flat out untrue.
Elon Musk, who
Oh God.
whenever I see his name, I just know it's gonna be some bullshit. I don't know any positive Elon Musk news, but he said he um, tweeted a picture of a bunch of people. Who knows if they were even Haitians or if they were immigrants. I think they were in a crowded home or something. And he said, if you want more of this, then vote for Harris. So of back to your point about um, Israel will not exist if you vote for Harris, right? If you want more of this, then vote for Harris. It's open, y'all. It is open. They are telling us who they are. They are living out in real time the components of Project 2025. And that's just what it is. And so when people, let's talk about those people who have not taken a position, who are undecided. I don't understand that.
So here's okay, so I don't understand that, but I don't understand how it's a close race.
This is what I'm
So
saying.
this is a really interesting thing, right? Because Tashira and I both live in different places, but kind of our own little bubbles, both in real life and in terms of content we interact with.
Yeah.
Um, and so, and we've talked about this a lot, right? Like you and I have a lot more in common, maybe, than like me and someone from the Midwest
Yeah.
who is voting for Trump. I cannot understand. I just can't. And
So
that it's close. That it's close means that there are lots of people who are supporting him.
there are a lot of people who are supporting him out of fear, right? Because he has signaled the pending authoritarianism if he becomes the president. And I don't think you get that far with that kind of agenda without fear. It is the fear of people losing their jobs. It's the fear of their mortgage or their rent being too high. It's the fear of immigrants taking over. It's the fear of my whiteness not being able to reign supreme. It's the fear of my kid going to a school and they have to learn different languages. And now my kids are going to be indoctrinated by the furries to be gay.
Oh, right. And pee in cat boxes in school.
Use litter boxes in schools, and if they get incarcerated, they're going to be sending beside an illegal alien who had a transgender surgery, as Trump said, that the government paid for. My God, not in our America. So what it is I honestly think that people's fear is actually higher than their love for Trump. He could be he could be one of them dogs and cats that he claims people are eating. It doesn't matter who he is. What matters, because he has no real charisma. He's not incredibly bright. He could be anyone, in my opinion. Politically, what it is that he's operating on fear. That's what I think is like most important right now.
I think that, and I think the people who he's going to put into positions of power to dismantle our democracy, including his vice president, not that he's not problematic, because he's so problematic. And obviously, President of the United States has a lot of power, and it's much easier to tear things down than build things up, right? We saw that from 2016 to 2020. But um, it's just terrifying.
So Patricia Duke says this country is a picture of the past with moments of progression.
That's a really thoughtful way of describing it.
Hmm. Moments of progression, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, so yes, thank you, Sharon. So Sharon Williams November says, remember the Willie Horton tactic. I actually just heard them mention that on the daily earlier. Say more in the chat about that because I don't know a whole bunch about the history. Margot, do you? I know it was during the Dukakis was the candidate, and it was the same kind of racist rhetoric that was being used to rile up the other side.
I don't know.
So here we are again. Again, it is a picture of the past with moments of progression. And you would think we would get a little bit smarter on the left, being that we've been here before time and time again. Yet we're up against fascism in the form of Donald Trump and his MAGA cronies. Oh, what about this, M? About him not being willing to concede that he lost the election, that years later he's still holding on to this lie.
That, and then I know she's not your favorite person,
Oh,
but what
good.
do you make of Taylor Swift coming out in support of Kamala and 400,000 people registering to vote
Oh,
in the
that's
next
amazing.
24 hours?
That's amazing. That is amazing. Yeah.
So, hopefully, a huge chunk of them are in Michigan, Georgia. That's the other part, that this race is coming down to Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, and Pennsylvania or something.
It's just why she's spending so much time there. So yeah, we are talking about swing states, and we're talking about largely undecided voters, and we're talking about people who are unregistered and otherwise would not vote. And to in many ways, me, you, the folks in the chat, the folks on the far left, the campaign is not even trying to reach those individuals any longer. It's not enough time, right? What's most important is flipping these states and ensuring that they're blue. And I'm wondering if it can happen in Georgia again.
What do you think?
I think I've learned since 2016 that anything is possible, honestly. Do you remember being in bed and saying like, "Oh my god, I think he's really going to win."
I didn't sleep one wink that night. I just was watching CNN and all the red.
Yeah. And so we live in bubbles. And I think for you and I mean, it's not just our friendship, but in other friendships and relationships that we have, we're probably more diverse in the people we talk to and interact with than many people in America. But even with that, we live in progressive parts of the country. And so I can't tell you what's happening in Nebraska. I
Right.
I don't know. I really don't know. And maybe that's part of the problem.
I also think there's this problem. So I saw someone in the chat, Patricia, saying, I don't think there is such a thing as an undecided voter in this election, which I agree, but I think there's something that happens to some people's brains when they feel overwhelmed. I can only speak for myself. Let me just put it that way, where they're like, it's too much.
Okay.
And I think there's this possibility that a lot of those people are like, well, I don't like him and I'm scared about her because of all the things he said. I'm just not going to vote.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And
Yep.
I'm not saying that that's okay, given what is at stake, but it's this question. Oh, someone from Georgia's here. Great. But we'll talk to them in a second. But um, it's this question about how to reach those people in a way that makes sense to them. And
Absolutely.
I don't know, we need some like political pundits on here to tell us how to do that. But it's not how we would be approached.
No, 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 no. So the person from Georgia says, I believe there are no undecided voters left at this point. It's about turnout.
So how can we support people turning out?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that's,
Big
obviously
question.
mail in.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I also read something very interesting about the mail in votes.
What?
That I think more Democrats do them.
Oh, so that's why he tries to spew all of the lies about. Okay.
Yeah, so that I believe, but we can confirm this, that once the mail-in votes are available, if they're a significant amount in some of these swing states, that's a good sign for Harris.
Okay, gotcha.
Because it's people like who are at college in Boston or like temporarily studying in DC but from Georgia who are trying to vote in their home state.
So we're the chat is starting to talk about what we can do. I love this, y'all. Let me just say that I give a monthly donation now to the Working Families Party. So they are a group that is most aligned with my political values, and they also are doing a lot of organizing with voters. And so I donate to them monthly, and I also have joined many of their calls. They have great political education as well that they do. So if you're looking for an org to join so that you know your dollars are being put to good use, I would recommend them. Someone says be a volunteer, offer rides to the election, pay for folks' Ubers or Lyfts to the polls, make calls, knock on doors, donate money. Okay.
Oh,
Um,
Auntie Cleo, I love this. I live in fake progressive Colorado, and the thought of voting in person triggers my anxiety in a major way.
mm, that's real. Yeah, that's definitely real. Other things, how are folks being engaged? How are folks being active? What is it that we can do at this time? Because it's go time. I mean, it's been go time, right? We've known what we have been up against, but we have to activate our networks in a serious way. I don't know what the actual polls are saying right now, though. Have you checked them recently?
Okay, so I have another thing. I don't believe the polls. How can we believe the polls after 2016? And do you respond to any of those texts that you get? No, do you?
I don't even know if I got them. I always wonder where that data came from, honestly.
So who's responding? I get 8 million text messages a day
Yeah.
from the Democratic Party.
Yeah, me too.
Um, and so I don't respond, which makes me think, like, who is responding? And how is that an accurate reflection of what's actually going on? And I also don't, I mean, I sound like a Republican here, but like, I don't trust the media. So I think the media is like, it's back to back, it's back to back, it's back to back. So they get more eyeballs on them constantly.
That's fair.
But I could be wrong.
No, that's all fair. So back to our Georgia commenter. I live on the outskirts of Fulton County, which always swing blue. So that's like the Atlanta area, I believe. The goal of the Harris campaign is to have super high turnout in the Atlanta metro area. Makes sense given the population, and shave off votes in the rural red counties, which there are plenty. There certainly are. Okay, got you. Gotcha. And but that also reminds me of the importance of local strategies.
Mm-hmm.
And in some of these swing states, how important it is to drill down because the race could be dependent upon a few counties.
Right. And remember the 11,000 votes in Georgia that
Yeah.
Trump was trying to find.
Can you just find me a couple more votes? You just find me some votes.
I also think to our point, and we've said this many times on the platform, it's really goes back to local communities and knowing kind of what the impediments are for access in local communities where there's going to be the greatest impact. So where my brain goes is what are we doing for elders in Fulton County?
Yeah.
Right? Is it going to be really hot? Is there water? Are there seats? Because I remember there were all these things about you couldn't, like, there were no places to sit down, so people
I
had to
remember
bring their own
that.
chairs.
I remember
Imagine
that.
if your grandma had to wait in line.
Mm-mm. And the lines are so long, and yeah, no, I remember that, which also is the strategy of the other side, I know, which is terrible, right? All of these things are tactical. So speaking about just local, who runs the local election board? Who actually is outside monitoring how this all happens? I mean, these are roles that are so critical right now, that are important in our communities, that I
Totally.
think we need to be paying attention to, because by the time it can't just all be about Kamala Harris. It's not just about the presidential debate. That's not how we're going to change the society. It's not how we're going to beat back Project 2025 or put an end to MAGA Republicans. That is not how that's going to happen singularly. The president does not hold that much power. Any other thoughts, M?
I'm just wondering, I know this is like a little off topic, but how is she taking care of herself?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how's she sleeping? Is she eating well?
I thought about that because I was like, she was so prepared for that debate. And I mean, I had a mock oral argument in law school and I almost came undone. I filed an appeal one time and was praying that I didn't have to actually argue it in court. So to think that you were on a stage in front of a tyrant, and then it's being broadcast around the world, 70 some million people, the preparation that took, I can't even imagine.
And the preparation about when not to respond. I think that's the part that's so screwed up. It's like she has to muzzle herself because he just keeps like biting at her. That's the part, right?
Mhm. But she also has to bite back at some point. So it's knowing the nuance of when to bite back and when to fall back. And just the emotional intelligence that it has to take is so much. It's so
So,
much.
have
So
you seen the interview? I don't know where she did it. It was a number of years ago where someone was asking about her career. She's
mm-mm,
like, you just have to like knock on every door and ask for them to open it. And if they don't open for you, you have to fucking break it down or something. And she used the she used the F word. Um, and it just made me think how he's not the first person
mm-mm,
who's been so nasty to her in a public way. I mean, this is the biggest stage,
yeah,
but
yeah,
sadly, kind of, I'm sure she's used to it.
yeah. That's real. I'm sure she has um been told no, and her credentials have been called into question by people who honestly were probably much smarter than him. So, she said that Putin can eat him for breakfast or for lunch, but she also knows that she can. It's just what she's up against with the psychology of all of the Americans who want to see someone like him in office. It's not about him. So Natty says she could take a nap the day after the election.
Someone says, I wish you could use CBD to relax. Why can't you use CBD?
Shit, get on some THC if you ask me. It's illegal if she coming to DC. Mm-mm. Yes, yes, yes. So TA says as a black woman, she's definitely used to it. Auntie Cleo said it's going to be super important to spend time informing elders of the facts versus the lies and helping them cast their ballot in a way that works
Yes.
for them. Folding chair or a ride to the nearest mailbox. Amen. We love that. And then Coles, hey, sis, hey, made a really good point. They have to keep broadcasting all of his horrid plans in Project 2025. I think you mean as far as like the counter.
How what's at stake?
Oh, I see. I see. Um, so there's someone else observing the Matrix. Oh,
Bone
bone
bro,
broth. We need to send Kamala a care packet, girl. We need to put a whoop in there.
a whoop.
Okay, thank you. We need to send her some bone broth, electrolytes,
I hope she has some good pillows. We know she has a nice husband.
some magnesium spray for the
Her
bottom of
husband
her
can rub
feet
her back.
until she's sleeping, until her breath changes, girl.
Present.
Exactly. All right. So folks are still going. Oh, this is actually really important. I had no idea. Facebook got a chokehold on the elders when it comes to misinformation. Did you know about this, Margo? I spend no time on Facebook.
So I spent no time on Facebook too, but I have heard that. And I have seen my parents go from like very sporadically using their phones to being on their phones constantly in retirement. And so it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, it doesn't. It doesn't at all. Tia says my almost 80-year-old father got so upset at the lies during the debate that I had to tell him to settle down. Don't get your pressure up, daddy. Yes, yes, yes. And again, the work to get us to November 6th is important. But as we've said here on the podcast, the work post November 6th, no matter who wins, is also critical as well. So pace ourselves and know what your grain of sand is.
Yeah, and I think our work is really obviously helping people who are going to have some challenges getting to the polls or voting or getting through the process, but it's also getting people who are disinclined to vote.
Exactly, exactly. And so I think when we talk about undecided, yes, there may not be too many more of them left. I mean, I don't know if that's completely true, but I think because there are those Bush era Republicans who have a very hard time with MAGA and don't know what to do. I don't agree with that position, but that is where they are. But there are also people who just wouldn't otherwise vote, who may not be registered. It's not a top priority for them for a number of reasons. And so, if you know those people in your lives, then I'm going to say do what you can to ensure that they are at the polls on November 6th and they are casting a ballot for Kamala Harris. I've in the past, Margo, been very hesitant to tell people like to be very specific and forthright about that. But I just so wholly believe that we are in a different circumstance and I'm afraid of what might happen.
Me too.
All right, so we're going to wrap this up with a few more comments. Bernice said, as a former Meta employee, misinformation keeps them employed.
Ooh!
Louder for the people in the back, because that's a word. That's a word. I mean,
Also, is
you.
it true that Mark Zuckerberg called Trump and said he could never vote for a Democrat again? Or is that just misinformation that I heard?
I mean, isn't that scary? Also, that we don't know. I mean, it's Orwellian. What's the truth and what's a lie? And also, when these large companies like Twitter slash X and Elon Musk have the government in their back pocket. And so the corporatocracy that is no longer even being hidden in this country. And so the information, what's a deep fake, what's AI generated, what's true, what's not, everything is actually really scary. And before we even got there, just the interest, as you pointed out earlier, Margo, about the polls and how a cable news network wants to just keep you watching. So before we even get to the damn disinformation, we have news networks that want you in front of the TV. And it's hard to find credible news sources. All right, so you all please keep your pulse on what is happening right now. We have new episodes that are dropping. Of course, we will keep this topic close as things emerge. And
Thanks
also,
everyone for joining.
thank you for joining. Em, do you want to close out about the hot dog eating contest and what happened with the lady? It was something. It was divorce. Then the people filed for divorce.
Okay, so there's two things that I want to follow up. One, I was right. Nikki Garcia, formerly known as Nikki Bella, officially filed for divorce. The comment section in her anniversary post from 2 days before the domestic violence incident has gone wild,
Oh
which
wow.
someone from our community alerted me to, basically saying that she like egged him on and never loved him and she was never over her ex John Cena, also a very famous WWE superstar from Massachusetts. um
This is deep.
but we haven't heard anything from Nikki or Artem, so TBD.
Okay,
I'm going to be talking about it actually on my channel next week.
keep us.
Okay,
Everybody, turn it. Tune in.
the other thing that makes me just sometimes be like, what is happening in this country? And I know you're going to be like, Margo, shut up. Is Has anyone seen this docuseries on HBO Max about the chimps?
Roger, cut
It's
this
the
off.
same. No, it is.
Roger, it's over.
It's the same producer as Tiger King. You saw that.
I did, Margo.
That woman who owns the chimps is voting for Trump. That's all I'm going to say.
And you text me at 5 a.m. and you'll be, no, we were in the middle of Fashion Week. That's what it was. And you were like, Tashira, 2 words, Mormon wives. You must watch this. And
Oh, that's wild too. Mom talk and the soft swinging.
okay, y'all. Y'all have a wonderful night.
They're eating the chips. Honka. People, I am not crazy. It's on HBO Max. It is so wild.
Auntie Cleo said, what's happening with the chimps?
Wait, Bernice, I watched The Mormon Wives today at the nail shop. It is so weird and wild.
Auntie Cleo said, let Marco speak.
But people, if this is what Americans are doing, one person talked about having sex with a chimp. Or I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on YouTube.
Sometimes, y'all, I have to tap out of pop culture. I'm just gonna go to Margo to run it.
What is happening? Like that's
Right.
I do. Oh my gosh, Des Moines. I love Des Moines.
I don't know what that is. Good night, y'all. Have a wonderful night.